Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by our coach, former high school football coach at Bernie, Capel, Brownwood, Belton, Rotan. Also played college football at Abilene Christian. Coach there as well. I was on the staff at the University of Texas for multiple head coaches. Now you can catch his work at ShipleyRanches.com. It's our coach, Bob Shipley. What's going on, Coach? How you doing?
What's happening?
Oh, man, I'm excited, Coach. I know you are. Longhorn Nation is excited as well. They should be. So we'll get into it. Football theory today, of course. We're talking Texas, Clemson. We'll just talk X factors, Coach. Things that we think are going to end up determining who's going to not only win this game, but how Texas can win this game, because we're on the optimistic side. Texas is favored by double digits. It is the largest point spread of all the first-round matchups of the college football playoff. And, yes, a game in a college football game in DKR in December. What a beautiful thing. So we'll get into it, Coach. We'll talk about it. Shout out to our sponsor, the Carrot Concierge. We'll tell you more about her and her fantastic business and products a little bit later on. Coach, let's talk about the X factors before we tell you about our sponsor. The X factors, I think, number one, I'm worried about the third quarter. We'll discuss that as well. We'll talk about the running game, both running games, the Clemson running game and also the Texas running game. We'll also dive into what I think could be another huge factor in this matchup. We'll talk about the quarterbacks. I'll give you the stage there, Coach, because we'll talk about Cade Klubnik, because I think you talked about how he could be a huge X factor. Quinn Ewers, of course, could be another huge X factor in this game. We'll talk about the red zone for Texas, which as of late has become a bit problematic. So those are some of the X factors we'll get to talking about here in Football Theory. Before we do any of that, let me thank our sponsor of the show, our friend over at thecarrotconcierge.com. Folks, the holiday season is right around the corner. So if you are looking for the perfect gift this holiday season, look no further than thecarrotconcierge.com. Jody Reynolds and her team over there doing a great job, and they can provide you with the perfect gift for this holiday season. She is a personal jeweler, and thecarrotconcierge.com with an office right there in Westlake. Jody focuses on helping men purchase the special gift for the woman in their life. You can use the QR code on the screen. You can even visit her on Instagram as well and see all of her fantastic products there. But thecarrotconcierge.com is where you can go and see all of her fantastic designs. Jody prides herself in providing personal service. She takes the extra steps to make sure that your lady gets exactly what she wants, and because she doesn't have the overhead of a storefront, she often can get the highest quality inventory at the lowest possible prices, as much as 30% less than what you see at a jewelry store. So if you're looking for something special for birthdays, anniversaries, or of course the gift giving season, Christmas right around the corner, Jody has a variety of tennis bracelets, rings, necklaces, and more. All beautiful jewelry, all personalized for you and yours. Check out thecarrotconcierge.com or visit her website and give her a call today and take care of that very special person in your life this holiday season via thecarrotconcierge.com. All right, Coach, let's dive into it. I think the first X factor that worries me a little bit, or at least concerns me, we talked about it in last Football Theory, is the third quarter for Texas. I would say of all the issues that we're going to discuss, the third quarter is probably easily the most problematic. And we talked about all the reasons why. And if you want more detail about that, please go check out last week's Football Theory. But I'll just give this stat out. In the last 4 games, Texas been outscored 31-3 by its opponents in the third quarter. And over the last 3 games for Texas, they were tied for last in the FBS in third quarter scoring, and only 2 teams scored fewer than them in the last 4 games in the third quarter alone. Not sure what it is. Sark wasn't asked about it. Thought he would be in the media availability. But, Coach, I went and looked up Clemson's third quarter scoring. I wanted to see where Clemson was in third quarter scoring. And I was a little surprised to come and find out, actually, when I looked up Clemson's scoring, they're one of the best first quarter scoring teams in the country. They're actually top 5, second in first quarter points per game, over 10 first quarter points per game. In the last 3 games, that's been around 9, a little over 9 first quarter points per game. So it is their first quarter that actually is one of their big quarters, kind of like Texas. They come out with a really strong first half, strong opening script. So Texas got to be ready for that. Their third quarter, they're top 20 in third quarter scoring. So looking at Texas, one of Texas' deficiencies, which is their lack of scoring in the third quarter, Clemson doesn't have to deal with that. They're pretty strong in the first to start a game, and they're pretty strong coming right out of the half in the third quarter. That's something Texas got to be ready for. No question about it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It seems like though we're lacking the ability. Well, it's obvious we're not able to put people away, and a big part of that is because of our third quarter woes. You look at A&M; it just felt like we're going to break this game wide open, And I don't know if it's a lack of confidence, lack of trust, lack of focus. But we had opportunities against Georgia that we kept spurning and spurning and spurning. And so, yeah, third quarter woes are huge. I still place, the responsibility of that, of course, on Sark. When we're talking about offensively, the buck stops with him. And if his players aren't playing up to their best of their ability in the third quarter, it's up to him to figure out why they're not focused, why they're not. If the play calling is stale, guess who that's on? It's on him. He's got to do a better job of, in my opinion, we talked about this several times on our podcast, but he's got to do a better job of maybe coming up with a script or highlighting those plays, as we've talked about, that work so well in the first quarter sometimes, and suddenly, inexplicably, they disappear off the call sheet in the second half. And so, anyway, those are some things about the third quarter that, players, man, this is the championship playoffs. I mean, if you can't get your butt ready to play 4 quarters of football, you came to the wrong school. We got to come out in the third quarter and play like our butts on fire. Okay. And the coaches have to be mindful of that with the pace and in my opinion, the aggressiveness of calling plays in the third quarter, because it's a trend that if we continue trending this way, the hopes of a championship will be gone, because you can't be ranked near the bottom of the country in third quarter points and still be predicted to win a national championship. You're not playing teams like that anymore. You're playing with teams. If you fire a dud in a quarter, you better watch out, because the Patsies are not on the schedule anymore.
Yeah.
Not that we had any to begin with.
No, but the margin for error shrinks considerably.
Sure.
The good news for Texas is fourth quarter is an issue for Clemson. Their fourth quarter scoring has been some of the worst in college football. They're actually bottom 20 in fourth quarter scoring in the last 3 games. And they're among the 90s, I think 96th in fourth quarter scoring this season. And they're actually, their fourth quarter defense has also been an issue for them. They're bottom 20 in college football in fourth quarter defense. So their fourth quarters have been a big issue for them. And that's kind of where they've lost some games in the fourth quarter. So Texas, if they can deal with their third quarter woes, it'll kind of be a battle of attrition here and see who has the better second half among these teams. Both these teams seem to start strong, but the second half woes for Texas in the last 4 games because of the third quarter issues. And Clemson, their fourth quarter issues have actually been something that has been problematic for them. So that is something to consider in terms of the X factor. Something else, Coach, is the run game for Texas. Texas, we thought Texas had found its identity in the run game versus Kentucky and versus A&M, arguably their best performances of the season on the ground and running the football. Trey Wisner peaking at the right time. That was not the case versus Georgia. Once again, Texas running game was bottled up. And I think it's a Georgia issue, but it'll be interesting to see versus Clemson. And Clemson's defensive front is a very active one. They're you go look at just big time plays, tackles for loss. They're a top 15 unit in tackles for loss. Overall, look at stacks. I mean, they're top 25. They're very active. They don't necessarily, I don't think they're a dominant run defense, but they have guys who can create havoc and create negative plays. And negative plays is something that really does seem to stifle the Texas running game. This is something that, and we talked about this, if you can stop the outside zone, which is Texas bread and butter run play, you can stop Texas running game, or at least you can bottle it up. Georgia did it really well, but Georgia's a different beast altogether. A&M's got NFL guys on the defensive front. They couldn't do it. Kentucky's got NFL guys on their defensive front. They couldn't do it. Do we think that Clemson can stop the wide zone? I saw that Pro Football Focus, and I'll give them credit for it. It's a great stat, even though it kind of actually quantifies something that we've talked about, how Texas loves the outside zone. They claim that Texas is top 10 in the country in outside zone reps, outside zone snaps. I believe it just based on the eye test. I don't have the information Pro Football Focus does, but they say they're a top 10 team in terms of running the outside zone. Clemson, one of their deficiencies defensively is stopping the outside zone. They don't stop the outside zone really well. They don't face a lot of teams that run it as much as Texas. But that is, to me, is really the question here. Can Texas get that outside zone going? Because when they do, it seems like every other part of the running game seems to work better when that element's working really well for them.
Yeah, it is. I don't think there's any doubt. And when you have a team that runs the outside zone well, you've got a pretty athletic offensive line. You know, when you got those big guys that are just dozers, you're not running the outside zone. You're going to run inside. The nice thing about having athletic linemen and you running the outside zone is it gives your running back more opportunities to find a gap, to find a crease in there and turn it upfield vertically going full speed as a defensive personnel or going laterally, trying to figure out which hole you're going to run in or which crease you're going to run in. And so it can be a very effective play. The problem is, you know, when you have a very active defensive front that can run with your linemen, is because make no doubt when you're running outside zone, there's some linemen who almost have to start sprinting to the sideline when the ball snapped because they've got to try to get leverage on the defensive guys. So it doesn't always matter. Sometimes you just have to maintain contact because you can push him past the hole, and that would create a crease inside for the running back. So I like our zone. I think we match up fairly well with them on running the outside zone, but I would also like to see us look at some misdirection, especially when people are flying outside to stop the inside zone. Another thing, you know, and I'm going to steal one. I'm going to steal one from your tool chest, and that is pony package. You know, that's another way to, if you're not having luck running the ball with the one back, go with the two back, and there again, you get another blocker, but you also get some misdirection out of that other back as well that can pause the linebacker and the safeties just for a second to figure out what's going on. Sometimes that's all the time you need to get up on them.
No, I think you're right about that, Coach. And according to Pro Football Focus, Clemson allows on the season over 6 yards per carry on the outside zone runs, which is if that translates to the game on Saturday, then Texas is in a really good place. Because if the running game is working for Texas, well, I don't think there's any way Clemson's going to be able to stonewall Texas. Now, one thing that Clemson could do to stop the Texas run game, just stack the box with defenders. That means they got to play a lot of man-to-man. And that's one thing that Clemson does a lot of. They play a lot of man-to-man. They got young DBs, but they're not afraid to play man-to-man. And if that's the case, that also potentially could present some problems if they decide, you know what, we're just going to stack the box, go man-to-man on the outside. Then it's up to Quinn Ewers. We'll talk about that in a second. For him to just make the right throws and make good throws in tight windows for Texas and make the right decisions. And then Texas also will have ways to generate big explosive plays in the passing game. All right, Coach, talk about the other side of the running game, the Clemson running game versus the Texas defense. It is easily other than Georgia, and Georgia blew out Clemson. This is the best defense that Clemson's going to face. Clemson's running game, although they do have a 1,000-yard rusher in Phil Maffa, who's a really good back, he's dealing with an injury. Got a shoulder injury apparently the last couple of weeks. And you go look at the last 4 games versus FBS opponents. Take out the Citadel. They played the Citadel down the stretch as well. But last 4 games versus FBS opponents, their run game averaging a little bit over 4 yards per carry, around 4.1 yards per carry. That to me, and Cade Klubnik has actually had to carry a lot of the run game the last month or so for them because of the injury to Phil Maffa. Apparently it's a shoulder injury that's going to need season-ending surgery, but he's trying to tough it out. And they're also dealing with a ton of injuries on the offensive line. And I think that's another issue for Clemson. They've had multiple guys go out on the offensive line. According to, and this is actually from Dabo Swinney. He said Trent Howard, which was one of their key backups, who actually had to come in to start because they lost Elijah Thurman for the season with a season-ending injury. He was out, but now also Trent Howard is out for the season too. So they've lost multiple offensive linemen. They've been shuffling offensive linemen around for the last couple of weeks. If Texas stonewalls that Clemson running game, and this kind of bridges to the next topic that you wanted to get into, can Cade Klubnik put the cape on? And that's the other X factor in this matchup.
It is. Both quarterbacks are X factors.
Yes, they are.
Both quarterbacks.
I agree. You're right, Coach. You're right. I agree with that. And we got to talk about both of them. Let's start with Cade Klubnik, because you're right. If Cade Klubnik's got that, he's a 5-star. A lot of people got a chance to watch him. I got a chance to watch him personally when he was at Westlake. He does have a lot of the it quality. He's a gamer. He's one of them dudes. If he goes off potentially, and he's got to do it against the best defense in college football, that's asking a lot. That could be the ultimate X factor or the equalizer for Clemson in this matchup.
Well, there's a pretty good chance that after the game on Saturday, Klubnik will surpass the 4,000-yard all-purpose yards for the season. Right now, he's got 3,300 yards passing. From ESPN, they came out with this. He's got 458 yards rushing and 7 touchdowns, along with 3,300 yards passing. So he's almost at 3,800 yards before the game. He's got 33 touchdowns. That ranks him 3rd nationally. Okay, this guy can play football now. Don't go to sleep on him. Anyway, his total QBR ranks 3rd among playoff quarterbacks. And he's coming home, and he'll have a chip on his shoulder. His head coach will have a chip on his shoulder. And they're just hoping they can catch us looking ahead. Yeah, but Cade Klubnik, don't think for a second that he's not capable of leading his offense to a victory, because he's done it many, many times. And the more I look into him, I wasn't that worried about this game, but the more I research into him, and we better come ready to play. We better come ready to play. Yeah. And I'm not sure exactly how we plan to defend him, because he is a guy that can hurt you with his feet. And those kind of guys always make us kind of our ears perk up and go, uh-oh, dual threat. We got to, we may have to spy him some, like, you saw us do, Ant Hill wind up having to do to spy the quarterback. And it works out pretty well.
I agree, but dual threat quarterbacks always make me nervous. They give me bubble guts. Just having to defend them, because anything can happen. And Texas had to defend a couple of them this year and did a really good job. But think about Diego Pavia and what he did versus Texas, right? He just kept the game close just because of his ability to improvise and make plays. Last game versus Georgia, backup quarterback comes in. Backup quarterback, young, inexperienced freshman. But because of the dual threat ability, look what it did to boost the actual traditional running game. Safeties have to slow play everything on the backside. Backside DNs got to slow play everything too. Linebackers are slow to get to the run fits. It changes the numbers. It changes the math. And that's what Cade Klubnik is going to do. And honestly, if I'm Dabo, I'll probably hit up Brett Venables. And I honestly, that game plan that they had with Dylan Gabriel a couple of years ago when they beat Texas, they also are running a veer and shoot offense, because that's kind of what Garrett Riley wants. I wouldn't doubt that they could have one of the X factors or variables that Texas didn't account for was Dylan Gabriel having a career high in rush attempts and rushing yards in that game. I think Cade Klubnik could approach a career high in rush attempts in this game. Yeah. Either scrambles or design runs. I could see it, to put everything on his shoulders. And that would be scary. But he's playing like a top 10 quarterback. Texas is playing a top 10 quarterback right now. Have they played a quarterback that's playing better than Cade Klubnik? No. Have they played a quarterback that's better? Maybe if you want to say Carson Beck is better, you can say that. But he's not playing better than Cade Klubnik.
You're right.
Not this season. Not right now.
No, that's a great point.
So I agree with you, Coach. That's the next factor. He's going up against the best pass defense and the best defense, in my opinion, in the country. So we'll see if he can make some plays against it. If he can, he'll earn the lot of respect. He's already got the respect of a lot of defenders because they're from Westlake. They're former teammates of him, but he'll earn the respect of a lot of other guys and fans around the country because not a lot of quarterbacks have been able to make plays against that defense. Let's talk about Quinn on the other side of this thing. And honestly, I just think Quinn's got to be dialed in the red zone. I think this kind of goes to the other X factor. We can link them together. I think the other X factor is the red zone, and I think the Quinn's inconsistency and Texas red zone issues lately in the last 2 games may be linked. And, the red zone issues, basically, they're not glaring, but Texas in the last 2 games, they've had 8 red zone trips in the last 2 games. I think they've scored 2 touchdowns in those red zone trips. That's reminiscent of last season. This season, they've been one of the better red zone teams in the country into the red zone touchdown percentage. So the question is, ultimately, Coach, because the field goals have also been inconsistent, with Quinn Ewers, if Quinn Ewers actually can maximize those opportunities in the red zone, because if the run game's not working, or let's say it is working, hell, it was working against A&M, and Texas still had red zone issues against A&M, even though the run game was working. I think the red zone is all about Quinn and Quinn clicking and Quinn being in the groove and Quinn being in a rhythm. Do we get the best Quinn is basically the question in this game. Because if Quinn is off, and by the way, this is a defense that causes a lot of issues. They cause a lot of havoc. They're top 25 in sacks. They're top 15 in tackles for loss. They can get after you. TJ Parker is his name. He's a beast. That guy's gonna play on Sunday. I think he's a sophomore now, so he's not even eligible. But that dude's gonna end up playing on Sundays. He's a grown man out there. He's got double-digit sacks on the season, 11, 19 tackles for loss. They got some dudes on that defensive front. Do we get the best version of Quinn? Because if we don't, it's going to be a close game, real close.
All right, I'm going to go back and say something to you that I said earlier this week, and that is, more importantly than that, do we get the best version of Sark? That's in the red zone, because whatever deficiencies Quinn may be having in the red zone, whose shoulders does that land on? It lands on, Milwee, but it lands on the head coach. And so if he's not getting it done in the red zone, the head coach's responsibility, or the quarterback coach, or whoever you want to put it on, has to get that straight and get those, whether it's play calling, whether it's happy feet, whether it's blitzing, whether it's they're mugging our receivers too much and our receivers aren't getting off, whatever it is, it's Sark's responsibility to get it fixed. And so I do believe the two are very much related. I'm not putting all this game on Quinn. I'm putting it on Sark, because if Sark will dial up his A game with his play calling and manage his tempo correctly, then Quinn can get in his groove. But if Sark is not in his groove, guess what? Guess who else is not in a groove? Quinn. When Sark's in a groove, it's easy for Quinn to get in a groove with his play calling, dialing up some good stuff, keeping the defense off balance, But I will say this too, in the red zone, if we don't have the ability to run the ball in the red zone, we're going in there with one arm tied behind our back, and it makes it incredibly tough when you don't trust your running game. And really, you can't even hardly trust your running game to get the ball in position for a field goal, because you don't trust your field goal kicker.
Exactly.
So that almost puts more pressure on Quinn and on Sark.
Yep.
To maybe do some things out of feeling pressure, because this guy ain't gonna make this field goal, chances are. So we gotta, we don't want to leave it into his hands. So there's a lot of things that play into it. But to me, it starts with Sark, and then it goes to Quinn. And then it goes to offensive linemen, obviously, and running backs, being able to run the ball. And I just am praying that Sark has a great game plan and he gets in a groove, and he's in a groove the whole game long, not just the first quarter. Where's that groove in the third quarter? Where's that mojo in the third quarter for Quinn and Sark and our offense? It starts with Sark, and I think it falls squarely on his shoulders.
Yeah.
His job is to problem solve. That's what coaching is. 90% of it is solving problems. Problems that opponents are giving you, problems that your players are having, or whatever it is. So I just hope that he has everybody ready to play. And like I said, if you can't get ready for a game like this, you came to the wrong school.
No, they'll be ready. But I agree with the coach. That's a great point about, it being on Sark and putting Quinn in the best position to be successful. He knows who his quarterback is by now. I mean, but now you guys been together for 3 years. You know who he is if he's going to be ready and can rise to that occasion. The thing is, though, because you're right. If the run, I thought the run game is working, the red zone's going to be working. But That wasn't the case in the A&M game. The run game was working, and yet you still had red zone issues. But that came back to Quinn in the red zone. So we shall see. But I think ultimately, to your point about Stark's got to be in the groove, what does Clemson do to basically get him uncomfortable, to make him erratic? Because you got to go through Quinn to do that, right? You got to disrupt Quinn. That'll have the after effect. That'll force Sark to have to adjust and modify his game plan. And if you look at what Georgia did, now you ain't Georgia. You ain't Georgia. Nobody is. That's the most man coverage that anybody played against Texas. A&M played a ton of man coverage against Texas. Man coverage works really well to disrupt RPOs. So Texas has an RPO-based passing game. And Texas, although a really deep group of wide receivers, with Isaiah Bond dealing with potentially an injury, and even if he plays, he's not 100% Bond. All right, so 100% Bond meaning he doesn't have the world-class speed. They don't have a lot of guys that they believe can consistently beat man-to-man coverage. And if they did, it's why they love putting Ryan Wingo out there late and try to see if they can just throw it to him and win 50-50 balls late. Some people didn't like that because I don't think Sark trusts his guys enough. These are guys that can go consistently win man-to-man matchups. And with that being said, that's how Georgia disrupted Texas a little bit, playing a ton of man-to-man. Now, you make it look very different in terms of your pre-snap disguise, but you're playing a lot of man-to-man. What's that allow you to do? Put an extra man in the box.
That's right.
Put an extra man in the box, put an extra man on the edge to stop the wide zone, stop the counter, to match the numbers or win the numbers advantage in the box. And then you stop the running game. You bottle the running game, then you force Texas to be one-dimensional. Then you get exotic. You put pressure on Quinn, whole damn thing implodes. And that's what Georgia can do. Can Clemson do that? I don't know. They got young DBs. They got some dogs up front, but I don't know if they can stop the Texas running game. Nobody's really able to do it consistently except for Georgia throughout the entire game. Texas run game always breaks through. And I feel like at Clemson, it's going to break through at one point, even if they can bottle it up to begin the matchup.
Yeah, but I think you had a really good point there. If I'm defending our offense, I'm going to start off in man, and I'm going to start off with a lot of different looks where you don't know who's blitzing, and I'm going to try to put pressure on the quarterback. I'm going to try to get him shook up early, and then the rest of the game, it's just a cat and mouse. It's chess. It's disguising coverage. It's disguising blitz. Not showing the same thing too often. You know what I mean? And Clemson's had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, so I think we're going to see some exotic things from them defensively that we probably haven't seen. Mm-hmm. But if we can decipher the code in time, we can expose that, because everything the defense does, there is an answer to it offensively if you figure out what they're doing. It's a riddle, it's a code. You got to figure out what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing when they're doing it. If that doesn't confuse you too much, and then we want to know why they're doing it and when they're doing it, and but still, the thing about it is, if they're running man coverage and they're you still got a chance to hit some balls over the top, and you still got some chance to hit a run to break through. How many times you seen that? You blitz and the running back runs right past you, and you're like, oh crap, and there's nobody. I mean, we talked about this too. Everybody's chasing their receivers downfield, and the running back's just running behind him. Nobody even knows he's back there.
Yeah, no, you're right about that, Coach. And to that point, though, about the man coverage, because Georgia played a lot of it, and I'll go back to one of the things that Sark did figure out in that Georgia matchup in the second one was targets to motion, get guys moving prior to the snap, and then hit those guys on the move. And they're basically either running away from man coverage or they're running through zone coverage. And it worked really well. I think so I believe they were 10 of 13 in that Georgia game. Yeah, 10 of 13 targeting players to motion or players in motion prior to the snap at the time of the snap. That's a target to motion. So Sark, if they're going to play a lot of man, expect to see a lot of targets to motion as well. All right, there you go. That's the X factors for football theory this week. Thank you, Coach. We appreciate that. And thank you to our sponsor, thecarrotconcierge.com. Go check that out this holiday season. You may be a little, stumped about what to get your significant other. Don't be. Just reach out to thecarrotconcierge.com and Joe will take care of you and your team because she'll make sure that you get that very special gift for that very special person in your life. And we appreciate her for sponsoring our team over here at On Texas Football. All right, Coach, appreciate all the time. Appreciate the knowledge as well. Appreciate Matthew behind the scenes, always hooking us up here for Football Theory. Thank you guys out there for watching and for listening. And until next time, hook 'em horns.